Welcome, everyone. Glad to have everybody here for ProductTank, the first one of 2020, right? Woohoo! All right. So I'm Scott Yelton, one of the organizers for ProductTank, and I feel privileged to be here with you guys tonight to kick off our new year. We've got a lot of exciting stuff that's going to happen this year. First, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the organization for anyone that has not been to a ProductTank event, or maybe your first timers. I see one hand. We got more in the audience? Oh, several. Yeah. Oh, well, not you, Dean. You don't count. First of all, ProductTank, international organization founded by Mind the Product in the UK. We celebrated, it's in 2010, so we're celebrating 10 years. And I think the date will be in May, so we'll have a special event that month. Usually they gather folks from different tank organizations and do some broadcast videos, some fun stuff there. But the point is, there's a lot of chapters of ProductTank out there. Of course, ours is the best, but we do share. There's mind share across that, and you can leverage that through some of the channels that are out there. There is a Slack channel for Mind the Product. There's newsletters. There's a lot of information you can tap into, as well as the most important resource, which is the people, which is why we're all here tonight, right? So we can network, we can share ideas, we can promote the ideas and promote product as a field, because it is one of the best fields, and it's getting even stronger. Our goal, to learn from each other, share best practices, and of course, inspire each other to do great things in the product world. So, first of all, I'd like to thank our sponsor for tonight, HQ Raleigh, for this beautiful venue. Give them a small golf clap. That's right. I hear they're up to 4 locations now, Dan. So yeah, they're expanding. We also have with us tonight one of our speakers, Dan Moore with Vaporware, is going to be presenting tonight, and we also have Tatiana Petrova, who's going to be speaking with us tonight as well, and want to let you know about some upcoming events that we have. So next, we're going to have a social, and we're going to spread our wings a little bit. We're going to go to Durham this time to Full Steam Brewery. Anybody ever been there? If you haven't, highly recommend the Working Man's Lunch, my favorite beverage. And it's a great venue. So if you've never been there, it'll be a treat. And we hope to pull in some additional folks in that area. And then in March, we'll have another content session. I know Dan and Tatiana, I think you both have been hard at work finding us some great speakers to come line up our content session for March, as well as throughout 2020. I think we're going to get some great knowledge this year. So hang with us for that. So I do want to throw out a little shout out though for some help. We are looking for additional corporate sponsors, and just to give you an idea, how low a bar we set. We're looking for someone. We look for venues. We look for food and beverage sponsors to bring us great things like we've got with Burger 21 tonight, and with HQ. And then we also we look for some assistance with our wonderful videographer Daniel in the back there, large and in charge. So always looking for that. So if anyone has any ideas, whether it's your company or someone you're familiar with, please funnel it to one of the organizers, and we will make sure to follow up with them. And lastly, I just wanted to let you guys know, I think I mentioned it, but we do have a Slack channel for Mind the Product, as well as our ProductTank.org site, where we will be posting this video along with a lot of other content. So make sure that you guys know what we've got. So without further ado, we're going to bring up our speakers for tonight. Tatiana Petrova from Ultra Strategy, and Dan Moore with Vaporware.
All right, so I am sick. I do have a 2-year-old at home, and he likes to share, just like product tankers like to share. So I apologize in advance, but we'll try and get through this. Can you hear me all right? Perfect. Awesome. So my goal for this evening is to hopefully inspire you all to some degree about how you bring product strategies to your organization. So I'm going to kind of cover 4 product strategies in the broad sense. There are a lot of different examples and a lot of different options between each one of these. But just for a show of hands, how many people purchase products in their organization? Okay, mostly everybody. How many people have been through an acquisition? Okay, mostly everybody as well. How many people build? Okay. And how many people partner with other organizations? A little bit less. Okay. Excellent. So hopefully I'm not telling you anything new since you do all of those things, but my goal is to really inspire you to look at the skills and think about strategy in a different way. Because if you've been part of the acquisitions that I've been a part of, you'll see that they often go horribly to begin with and aren't thought out ahead of time. So just a little bit about me and the company that I founded. So I founded a company called Vaporware. Joshua is also here with us. He's our design lead. But essentially, we really like one of these strategies, partnering. We also happen to do all the building behind products as well. So we take products to market, find product market fit, develop, design, actually help these organizations bring those products to their table and offer them as services. So, but why should you listen to me? A little bit of my background, I went to Georgia Tech. Anybody else go to Georgia Tech? Oh, damn. Okay, it's a pretty cool school. It's down in Atlanta. But right out of Georgia Tech, I joined a company called Cisco. Anybody work at Cisco? No? Oh man, I'm 2 for 2. How about Windstream? I know somebody in the house works at Windstream. Hey, there's one. Okay. And then somebody else works at Vaporware, which is pretty cool. So through this career, I have done these things. Most of them have been on the Vaporware side where I've had more control. Obviously, control helps to direct some of these and control some of this product strategy. But some of them, like Cisco, have acquisitions as part of their product strategy overall. And so I've been on the tail end of that product strategy and seen, or have not seen, how product strategy is actually in play in those motions. So the first thing I want to talk about is what things should you think about when you're thinking about your product strategy overall. The first one is expense. So if you don't know who this is Jerome Powell. He is the chair of the Federal Reserve and controls the value of the dollar most of the time today. But in general, with product expense, we often look at the line item on a product. How much is it going to cost me? How many seats, how many users per month do I get? But we want to look at the entire life cycle of a product. So that includes the initial integration costs into our entire product suite. That also includes like ongoing hosting costs and what is the operational expense of that product, of that software that we're talking about. The second major factor is time. Anybody know who this is? Hopefully, somebody? Yep, he's younger here, but this is Einstein, a little less crazy. Something about getting old and having kids maybe gets you crazy. But when we think about time in our product strategy, we really want to think about what's the time to market as well as what's the time to value. So do we need this value yesterday? I had someone call me recently and was like, I need to make a product decision today. How do I do this? And I'm like, well, let's not be too hasty, even though time is incredibly important and you don't want to put the cart before the horse and get too far ahead of yourself. So that time to value is more of the adoption time of our product strategies and how that plays different in these 4 different strategies here. I also like to look at opportunity costs under time. So if I make this choice and go down this product strategy, what other product strategies or what other opportunities am I missing out on? We'll get into that a little bit more. But if you make the wrong product decision, what's your reevaluation timeline? So can you pull out of that product strategy? Let's say you purchase a product and start to integrate it with your solution, and then you realize, hey, I kind of missed out on some of the due diligence up front. What's the time to get into another product? Can I scrap that, cut my ties, sunk cost, all that kind of stuff? I think part of us as product managers, one of the biggest factors we like to talk about and why we choose to build software more often than not is the control factor. But with that control, like this guy here, comes responsibility and tons of angry fans if you don't control the story properly. I have this other great picture of George Lucas selling Lucasfilms to Disney, and he looks like his soul is being taken from him, even though he just made $4 billion. I think the competitive advantage that comes with owning and controlling software and that power is a double-edged sword. And so it's something that really needs to be considered wisely in your product strategy. So that gives you the ability to choose a direction that you're headed in for your product. But it's also important that you don't just invest once and cool, all of our expenses and all of our building is done. What is the continued responsibility of additional investments to your customers or your users that you have? Anyone know who this is? Nope, not Bezos. Kind of the Bezos before Bezos. So this is Ray Kroc of McDonald's. So he definitely looked at McDonald's as an opportunity to rely on economies of scale when it came to his strategy. So it's kind of counter to another factor that I cut out of these slides for time around complexity. So if your product and if your strategy is super simple, it may be very easy to scale to a lot of people. But if it's really complex and it touches a lot of different parts of an organization, it may be much harder to scale that. So looking at economies of scale, we see strategies of purchasing software or partnering with another organization when you don't have it. But at the same time, even if you don't have economies of scale, if you're building internal tools, that is a good option as well. And finally, maturity. So I think this is just a great example and really good because in a lot of cases, climate change is a really interesting market. We're seeing, and by maturity, I mean maturity of the market, not necessarily of your product. If you're starting a new decision, you can look at maturity of products if you're evaluating ones to buy, but in particular, maturity of the market. If you're near the end cycle of a market and you see a lot of consolidation coming together, you see acquisition strategies happening a lot. You see commoditization of tools and markets in that way where building might not be great. But a market can be segmented and focused in different ways. So for example, QuickBooks, which is another example in here, the financial industry, GAAP accounting practices, is quite common. It's been around for a long time now. But could you create a accounting software for a dentist office that works in this one particular way and needs something different? So they've changed that market and looked at the maturity of that market in a totally different light. So there's elements to that in your strategy as well. So some examples. These guys founded Intuit. So these are the original founders that we can thank for if anyone's ever integrated with QuickBooks or anything that they've done. It's not fun, but we have a whole bunch of different types of purchases that you can make as part of a product strategy these days. So you not only have off-the-shelf software, which the shelf is disappearing, or has disappeared for a lot of us, hopefully, and QuickBooks Desktop kind of version, or QuickBooks Online, software as a service. It's a pretty common example. But at the same time, if you look at two of their competitors, PayPal is more of the platform approach where you're buying into an entire ecosystem, and Stripe is API integrations. So if your developers are actively choosing what products to integrate with that come with a price tag, maybe usage type, they are impacting your product strategy overall. So something to keep in mind. Somebody know this one? Yes, IBM and Red Hat. So this is an example of an acquisition product strategy. I'd love feedback on this, by the way. This is the first time I've given this talk. So if you are taking notes or have suggestions for me, definitely let me know. But I chose the word permanent here. Nothing in life is permanent. I was using the word exclusive before, but I think what I'm really trying to get at is it's harder to reverse these decisions. There's not an easy undo button as soon as it happens. So the idea with this equation, though, and I forgot to talk about the equation last time, is that you're trading an expense, you're trading usually large dollars for a product now with the control. So you have that ownership at that point. You can have that competitive advantage and that responsibility in that direction. Some other good examples, you have big companies like Cigna and Express Scripts going after totally different services in different markets. Anyone heard of Two Toasters? Small firm up out of Durham. They became Ticketmaster Mobile because Ticketmaster was using them as a partner or a vendor that basically said, hey, you guys are really good at what you do. Come, let's acqui-hire your entire team and become Ticketmaster Mobile. You have more of the merger side as well. IBM, Red Hat is a good example of that, but also BB&T and SunTrust, I think, just released their new logo last week or this week for Truist. And then also in this category that a lot of people don't think about is open source software. So I include this in the acquire section of product strategy instead of the buy section because the main thing is you still get that control. And I would only say it really falls under this category if you are getting into the internals of it and controlling it. So part of, again, your developers, so I have a development background, but if your developers are making these decisions on the fly and you don't know about them as part of your product strategy, it's something to keep in mind. Yep.
Do you also see open source being part of the build process? Because there tends to be where we end up talking about it all the time, is in the build process as we're building, and something's going to take 16 staff months to build, but if we use the open source, we can do it in 6, and then of course it delivers in 25.
So, yes, I think each one of these are just kind of examples of broad strokes. I think that there are lines between them and all these hybrid models, and you might have a company strategy that's totally different than your product strategy. So at this level, I guess I'm trying to communicate or talk about how does one of these examples play into your own environment that would give you control and what kind of comes along with that.
I have another question.
Sure.
So, obviously there's company objectives, there's product objectives, there's team objectives. When your product strategy obviously should be fitting with the company strategy, there's certain things, especially in technology,
Right.
where it doesn't always fit with the company strategy. Being in the position that you're in, that you just play the roles from the bottom up and up down, what's the best way to be able to get your COO or your CEO to be able to realize that, especially when they're not technical, they're only about dollars and cents?
That's a loaded question. No. No, that's great.
I've been living
Are
it
you-
for like the last 10 years. So.
Are you going to talk a little bit about that? Okay, it's not in your talk. There's no easy answer. I wish that there was a silver bullet. What we see a lot of the time is that who the founding team is or who the executive team is what's reflective in the organization that they build. And speaking from the development side as well, organizations build products. And so products often mirror their organization structure as well. So they should be aligned overall. If they're not, that's a problem.
I think it's on you to be able to learn to bridge to the language that they're going to understand, because otherwise you don't have any chance, right? So the question is, what is it that they need to hear from you that helps them make a business decision that makes technological sense for the product?
That's probably the biggest challenge on that. We were acquired just recently by a private equity firm, and they don't work the same way technology.
That's interesting. I wonder why. Shameless plug. No. That's great. Shameless plug for Dave, though. He gave a talk last year in this group. So on our website, he has some information about communicating. And I don't know if you'd be interested in talking, but he's really good at that communication stuff. So, which leads me, okay, final, or two more real quick for examples. So this is the team behind MailChimp. And they have a really cool story because they came out of Georgia Tech. That's why it's really cool. But they took 17 years to get to where they are today. So they bootstrapped, they were a development firm or some kind of consulting firm, maybe marketing to begin with. And so they took a lot of time to get to what you see today. So if anyone ever comes and says, hey, I want MailChimp, but I want you to build that for me in 3 months, that's a really good story. So I think the main component of this, as hopefully we all know, is that it's no longer now. You don't have a product tomorrow. Building takes time. But you do maintain a lot of control that comes with responsibility and all that other fun stuff. Some other good examples, though, it's not just products like MailChimp that you can buy and integrate with. It's entire portfolios like Zendesk as a good example. They could be services like AWS, and they can even be components. So React and Rails are two open source software from Facebook and more of a community. Originally came out of Basecamp on the Rails front, but overall, those are still products and they still have strategies. So it's applicable if you're doing those things as well. Finally, this is one that I was personally affected by. So this is a partnership between EMC over here and Cisco back almost 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more now, to create VCE. And so what's really interesting about this one is that I had trouble fitting it into the other equations that I tried, all the other ones. So it's a lot fuzzier. So I put us up there as well as a partnership. There's no right answer for this one. It doesn't fit a simple equation. So I have this really fuzzy thing called alignment and a really fuzzy thing called a relationship, and it can mean a bunch of totally different things. So I think that's one of the powers of this strategy, though, is that a lot of things can fit into this model with a really low set of skills that's required to make this work. So Delta and GoGo is an example of a huge corporation like Delta and GoGo Wireless offering wireless services exclusively on their planes. VCE are these megacorps coming together. VMware was also involved in that one. And I think they actually put some dollars behind that and spun out another company called VCE. And then you have exclusive partnerships like Costco and Amex. No longer exclusive anymore, but they were back in the day. So you see a lot of different kinds of relationships and kinds of quote-unquote alignment. You could even make a press release just to see if your customers like the idea of a partnership between these two companies and see what the response is as part of your product strategy. And if you don't get any response, you just kind of forget about it and it fizzles out. I've seen that before.
Yeah, but now Cisco makes their own UC cluster, you know? Like VCE Computing, when they started, they were just building their own vBlock product, you know?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
conversion infrastructure. Now,
Yep.
you look at Cisco went in a different direction, they're building their own
Yep.
infrastructure.
I swear that relationship, so I was on a team that did a lot of that, and I swear in this relationship, it was just a snub at HP, because HP already had products in that space, and they were like, well, crap, we got to compete with them now, so how can we quickly get there? But yes, I think they've gone different directions, and it's no longer part of their strategy, so I might be dating myself a little bit there with that. But any questions about examples and that kind of thing? Cool. Hopefully that was pretty clear. Need to move through this a little bit faster. So real quick, what's required for each of these strategies? For the buy strategy, I think it's pretty simple. I think these 3 pieces are all your organization needs. So you need to be able to evaluate products, which some are good at, some aren't good at, or maybe we don't spend enough time evaluating products. But we need to integrate those products into our systems, and then we need to train on those products. So now that our organization is using them, now that they're part of our product suite, how do we train our customers? How do we train our internal staff and all that kind of thing? Overall, 3 skills is what I would wager is required to have buy as part of your product strategy. Acquiring takes a little bit more. So we still have evaluating and integrating. I think it's a little bit deeper. I think it requires that you evaluate and integrate the internals of the products. But I think you also have to start having skills on how to deduplicate organizations as a whole. So how do you not fire half of your support team, but merge them together? And the one piece on this slide that I think a lot of acquisitions miss is focused on the user experience. I think you need to have designers in these organizations, even though the products have already been built, because the user experience and what your customers can come to expect should be unified. Building It's a whole lot more complex, 9 completely different things. Hopefully we all know this as product managers. You're doing a whole lot, and just when everyone says building, they're thinking up here development, not just coding, but design and development and product management all fit in just one piece of this bucket, I would say. I would say partnering, though, is also very easy. From a business standpoint, you need to be able to discover when it makes sense to partner. You need to be able to manage that relationship. Often that relationship kind of sours over time, maybe between Cisco and EMC. And I think you need to be able to communicate and negotiate as part of that. So finally, how do you take this? How do you use this on your own? A quadrant, as any consultant likes to do. Risk reward, how do you place those skills? How do you evaluate those skills? I think that's up to you and your individual organization. But basically define what your min and max are for risk inside of your organization and where opportunities line up on this. So here's an example. If all the partnerships are lining up here and you have all these different options, same with buy, where does it fit in? You might have them spread all across the board. And it's a good way to visually communicate that to upper management that might not understand how this fits in to your overall strategy. Yeah, this is my information. Thanks for coming. I think we have time for like 3 minutes for questions. That was a lot. I think I can also share copies of the slide afterwards, so these slides afterwards. So, and I have actual notes behind this of a bunch of stuff I didn't cover, so instead of just pretty pictures. But
On your matrix or
yeah.
cross-hatching form, do you find that buying is easier for you to be able to do in your industry, or do you sometimes end up finding out that after you buy, it doesn't always look as good as it does on paper? It's one of the biggest things I've been shifting my product managers to do is to move more towards the build and understand why the build is there, and if we're going to buy or acquire,
Yeah.
make sure the technology fits, because we work 4 companies and only one still sits in my company. So.
Wow. Yeah. I think in general, what I see in the companies that we work with, they jump to building way too soon. They don't consider these other opportunities to see if they're even markets that they want to go after. And so where buying fails, when it does fail, I think it's most of the time spent here. They sit in on a sales pitch and say, cool, I'm ready to buy, instead of actually bringing in the right people that are going to have to do these 2 pieces.
Because it's normally that middle one that ends up becoming the problem.
Right.
I was curious about yet another model that maybe in your mindset fits into one of these,
Yeah.
which is a hybrid between buying and building.
Okay.
So what are the factors do you think? Would it just be a sum total of the factors that you covered here, or would there be something else when you're thinking about any, and I'm thinking mainly, I work for a consultancy, so we build software for other companies. So the buy versus build question is always part of the conversation.
Yeah.
We build software, but we are mainly interested in helping our clients be successful. A lot of those systems that they need are internal systems. So they go, for instance, well, we want to leverage Salesforce because we're already leveraging it through our organization, but we also have this very unique custom problem that needs to be solved. You know, so a lot of the times what we're dealing with is figuring out how do we leverage an existing solution, so buy, but then build on top of it.
That's kind of, it's funny because that's where I sit quite regularly.
So I think, and that's something we see all the time, is I have this platform already, how do I integrate with it? I think that's where these equations really help me out and saying, cool, am I putting in these factors, or if I go back to my buy strategy, am I just putting in this factor? And so which one does it fit into? And then it helps remind me that, okay, these are the skills that are going to be required if this is what the relationship's going to look like. Salesforce is a totally different beast, where I would say that's somewhere actually between acquisition and even though you're not pulling that into your organization, you have a lot of control because it's much more like a platform than anything else. So I think that between that, like sales, if your organization adopts Salesforce, that's a permanent expense. So that's kind of how I'm using these equations to equate to, oh yeah, and that reminds me to think about these skills, if that makes sense. Cool. Awesome. Thank you.